I think that this election was the funeral for the Republican Party as we know it. The Republican Party, as we have known it, is dead. And voters have made that clear. And in particular, the folks who did not vote for Republicans in this last election were independent voters, working class independent voters, folks who voted for President Obama once upon a time, folks who then voted for President Trump but stayed home this time. We are not a majority party unless we can appeal to those voters. I'm not going to vote for Senator McConnell, and I've been very clear about that. I feel very strongly about that, and I said that before this election. So will somebody challenge him? I don't know. I don't give advice to my colleagues, so we'll see what others do. I don't have a prediction for you.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Josh Hawley might be on to something, okay? Because I'm with him. I think the GOP, the old GOP as we know it, is dead. It's dead and gone, and the midterms were the funeral because they absolutely inspired nobody to come out and to vote for them because they actually promised to do anything. That is the God honest truth, okay? And what we saw in the midterms was one of the most disappointing performances that we've seen in a long time from a party that is out of power. And in a normal world, or a normal job, when you underperform in such an embarrassing fashion, you would get replaced, right? You either get fired or demoted. You would step aside and let somebody else take the reins of leadership because you failed. However, that's not how the world works if you are a corrupt politician. That is not how GOP leadership works. Apparently, they're being ruled by Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy into eternity. Okay, they basically become kings of the Republican Party in Congress. As there was a huge GOP challenge towards Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, people were revolting back against them, rightfully so, because of their failure to lead this party to a midterm victory, a red wave as predicted. People said, look, maybe it's time for something fresh. Maybe it's time for something new. Okay, so people started to try to get votes, okay, to replace them in leadership. However, that failed. Kevin McCarthy has been reelected to be the leader of the GOP and to be the nominee for Speaker of the House for the GOP. Now, he did face challenge from a former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Andy Biggs. Unfortunately, that didn't work. He got 188 votes to 31. You got 188 Republicans who voted for Kevin McCarthy, who underperformed in these House races. Okay, he underperformed. Who has Kevin McCarthy inspired? Does anybody know anything about Kevin McCarthy? Right? What is Kevin McCarthy for? What is he against? Nobody really knows. Okay, nobody knows anything about the guy. He just kisses Trump's ass, which is why he got endorsement from Trump to be Speaker of the House. Okay, we also have the Senate, where Mitch McConnell has been reelected after facing a challenge from some brave senators in his party that said enough is enough. This guy has been leader forever, and he has gotten us nowhere. Except there has been a few wins from Mitch McConnell, mainly the Supreme Court in opposition to the Democrats. I got to say, Mitch McConnell has been excellent on those fronts, okay? Opposing Obama, the Democrat agenda, and the Supreme Court. But outside those things, Mitch McConnell has not inspired anything, right? He is a corrupt politician. He is one of the most, if not the most corrupt politician in Washington. He failed during the midterms because he misallocated funds to candidates based off the candidates that would kiss his ring. For example, Blake Masters out in Arizona, who was picked by the base in the Arizona GOP primary. Mitch McConnell withheld funds from him because Blake Masters was backed by Trump, who Mitch McConnell hates. He's currently in a war with Trump. And because Blake Masters said, look, we need new leadership. So Mitch McConnell said, you know what? I'm not going to fund you. I don't care if we lose. He spent that money instead on Lisa Murkowski, the anti-Trump senator out in Alaska that voted against Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination. Yeah, she's currently in a tight race with Kelly Tshibaka, who is Trump's pick, in a race that is guaranteed to go to a Republican because of ranked choice voting in Alaska. Mitch McConnell, again, he gave money to somebody that will kiss the ring, even though it was totally a waste of money, just so that he could reelect somebody that, again, would make sure he keeps his leadership position. And how does Mitch McConnell and people like Kevin McCarthy keep their leadership positions? Well, it's very simple, guys. Money. That's why. Mitch McConnell is a very well-connected individual. This is why this guy has sold out to big corporations and lobbyists. And because of that, he raises a whole lot of money. That is why he's a kingmaker, because he has the ability to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. He uses that money in order to support candidates that he likes in key races. He is probably funding at least, 20, 30 or so, majority of these senators in the Senate, the Republican senators in the Senate. He's funding them. And he's donating big money to their campaigns. This is why they are afraid to stand up to him. Because if they stand up to him, he will do the same thing, the black masters, to them. He will make sure they don't win. He will make sure they lose their political careers. And I want you guys to understand how bad this is. You, the voter, said, look, we want our guy to represent us in the general election. Mitch McConnell basically overthrew your democracy by choosing to not fund that candidate, the candidate selected by the people, and making it so that candidate had to unfairly compete with Democrats who go all in on their candidates, regardless of whether or not they're too progressive. They go all in. Mitch McConnell says, nah, you're too much of a threat to my leadership. That is why Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy remain leaders of the Republican Party in Congress. Is simply because he's bought all these politicians. He's probably bought your senator, right? That's why your senator won't stand up to Mitch McConnell, despite the fact this guy has a 7% approval rating in the Republican Party. Might be lower than that. How's the guy that has probably the lowest approval rating in the party control everything? He decides who gets elected. Money. It's really that simple. And this is why the Republican Party needs new leadership and a new vision. They need to move away from sucking off corporate America and move towards a more working class agenda. And that is something that I can say that people like Josh Hawley, who's in the Senate, who did oppose McConnell for leadership, has come out here and vouched for as a replacement for the now dead neocon corporatist wing of the Republican Party.
For new leadership in the Republican Party. And having served in Congress for 8 years, I know how much pressure there is for members of both parties to follow leadership, go in lockstep, vote party line. I think that's really, there's a lot of different issues, but what kind of leadership do you envision for this new Republican Party that gives people the freedom and independence to actually vote their conscience?
Well, we need good, strong, independent leadership that actually listens to voters and doesn't just listen to the Washington lobbyists. And I'll just tell you, when it comes to the GOP, the Washington Republicanism that cares more about Wall Street than it does about working people, it's time for that to come to an end. The Washington Republicanism that's all about adventures abroad, the neoconservatism of these global wars, not focused on working people in this country, it needs to come to an end. I think what voters are asking us to do is pretty clear. Secure our streets. Let's put new cops on the street, 100,000 of them. Secure the borders. Stop the indoctrination of our children and bring jobs back to this country. It used to be you could support a family on one good wage. You can't do that anymore in this country because of the ruinous trade policies that unfortunately both parties have supported. That has got to come to an end. Republicans have got to be the party of working people and working class culture. That's what we're fighting for.
Yeah. So at all on this last election day, I think that alone sends a really strong message that we're not hearing any of the pundits address, which is people don't have trust that they actually have public servants there in Washington who are fighting for them, not for the party, but for them to address some of these challenges that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at who didn't show up, Tulsi, you've got independents who don't like Joe Biden
And they voted for President Obama back in the day. They voted for President Trump, but they looked at the options this year and they're like, nah, I don't like Biden at all. I don't like the Democrats, but I don't trust the Republicans. Why? Because the Republicans weren't offering anything. They weren't saying we're going to secure the border. They weren't saying we're going to put cops on the street. We've got to go out there and make that case. We need new leadership in the Republican Party in Washington. This is why I will not support Mitch McConnell for leader. We need new leadership, but we also need real convictions. That's what we've got to be about going forward.
Thanks so much for joining us, Senator Hawley.
Josh Hawley is 100% right. And this is why I think that he should have been the leader of the Senate. Or at least somebody else. They put up Rick Scott. Should have been somebody else besides Mitch McConnell. Whoever is leader has to be the guy that is leading the party from a policy and agenda and vision perspective. Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, they have no vision. Josh Hawley has a vision. He has a working class agenda. He has bucked the party line to support more working class, pro-America policy. In fact, did you guys know that Josh Hawley actually proposed a bill called the Making America to Sell in America? A bill that was designed to at least be some solution to our supply chain issues. You know, the thing that is causing inflation to be out of control, to be at historically high levels. Yeah, Josh Hawley had a bill that was designed to address that by requiring certain goods to be made in America. Because again, you would think it would make sense that some essential goods that we need, right, just for basic survival would be made here. Therefore, we're not in a national security situation where some foreign country that we rely on, cough, cough, China, decides to stop supplying us with an essential good because they don't like us anymore. Okay. Or for example, maybe China takes over Taiwan. Okay. Taiwan produces semiconductors. They're the largest semiconductor manufacturers in the world. Okay. They take over Taiwan, which is again why Taiwan is such a big deal. Well, that basically means that we can't get electronics anymore, right? Hard to get cards anymore. Everything, any electronic is run with a semiconductor. Just saying. Just saying. I think we should be making semiconductors in America. Okay. Which is something that Congress has tried to address. But I'm just saying, it is things like that that Republicans have to have solutions for, and you can't just be a party of saying no to the Democrats. Sometimes you got to play offense and start proposing your own legislation because, again, Republicans, they didn't convince anybody that they had a solution to inflation. They just said, hey, vote us in, stop Biden's agenda, and people just assumed that that would just solve inflation. I'm not necessarily sure if that's the case, right? So again, when people are going out here and they're voting on inflation, they're not thinking about, okay, well, the Republicans, they have a solution. So again, what reason are you giving people to vote for you outside of where they just hate Democrats? That is the biggest problem with the Republican Party. No vision, and they never, ever, ever play offense when it comes to pushing an agenda in Congress. They never do. And when they do play offense, we already know what they're going to do, right? They're going to have more tax cuts, which is fine. I love tax cuts. But to a certain extent, Republicans, they never just say, hey, look, we're just going to give tax cuts to small business and, working folks, right? People that work, small business owners. It's never just them. They always got to give it to big corporate America as well, too, which is a problem because big corporate America, they don't like us, right? They already showed you we woke, we're progressive, we don't like you. So why in the world should we keep being so friendly to these people instead of being friendly to small businesses or friendlier to small businesses by rolling back unnecessary regulations? Okay, regulations that make it harder for small businesses to compete with big business. Or, for example, rolling back environmental regulations that keep us from improving our infrastructure at our ports of entry, which again is a part of the supply chain issue as well, too. You guys remember all those boats that was just hanging out, right, during the supply chain crisis when it was at its peak? They were just hanging out at the ports. Hundreds of boats, hundreds of them, filled with supplies and goods, not unloading them. I'm just saying. Republicans got to evolve, man. You got to evolve out of playing defense with Democrats and actually play offense and push an agenda that is actually pro-working class. And again, I think that's part of the economic populism that Trump has brought to the Republican Party. And that's one of the reasons why I am not willing to just say, hey, let's dump Trump, right? Drop him like a rock, because what he brought to the Republican Party is good. There are a lot of good things he brought to the party, and we need to continue to go in the direction of economic populism. Okay? If the Republican Party stands a chance, even a chance of defeating Democrats, they got to put forward an economic agenda that people, including independents and conservative Democrats, are going to get behind. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective.